10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
The idea of the spread so fast through a population, just the way it was said through the seafood market, is highly unlikely and improbable.
This is research that they actually published. They were working on developing a coronavirus for the human host.
Maybe the virus could be generated with a reverse engineer process.
At the end of December, human-to-human transmission already exists. More patients than the government claimed. And also, seafood market is just a smoke screen.
It appears that the party's main goal here is suppression of information, controlling the narrative. That's more important to them than actually ending the epidemic.
WHO, China government, don't want them to tell the truth, so they collaborate with China government. And also,
there is nothing wrong with your screen. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling the messaging in this transmission. We will tell you the topics you may speak about. We will remove any speech we deem unfit. We will identify and protect you from all that is evil. You need only put your full trust in us. We are the government, and we are here to help.
Welcome to episode 10. What do we got going on in the tank, Georgie?
Yeah, this week we've got the Portland Police Department. The entire rapid response team has resigned. All of them. There were 50 members of that team. They handled all rapid response for riotous situations and other types of emergencies. They are no more. Also, the Wuhan lab. Some different perspectives from some proof-driven evidence. And then the Chinese defector. There's a new Chinese defector that has crossed over and is now trying to give us a ton of information that is currently being validated. We'll go over a little bit about what he's saying and who's saying he's wrong. And then we have a piece Jack put together on Fatherless for Father's Day with some stats that may shock you.
Ready to get in the tank, Georgie?
I think so.
Let's do it. Hey, George, today I want to talk to you about progressive policies and the impact that they're having across the United States. Let's start out with Portland. Just this week, a police officer was indicted on assault. The whole police department has stood up on his behalf. They believe this is politically charged. And as a result of that, the crowd control unit for protests, 50 members strong, all resigned. The second thing that ties this together, in San Francisco, District Attorney Chelsea Bowden has reduced penalties on both violent and nonviolent crime. He's pursued a political agenda and a very progressive agenda to the degree that when he took office, crime has gone up by 50% in terms of theft. In fact, people are coming from other cities and towns to commit crime because of the lack of penalty. Police make arrests less than 3% of the time, and half of those have been thrown out. Finally, I'm going to share with you violence across the United States. I want to show you a little clip of what just happened in New York City.
82-year-old man punched in the head and then robbed while he was buying coffee. Morning at a bodega on the Lower East Side at the corner of East Broadway and Clinton Street. Police say prior to the assault, the suspect demanded his cane.
Yeah, so that video, I mean, this whole situation of violence and people not getting arrested and these DAs being, we've showed a list of DAs that are funded by George Soros. There are other organizations out there funding people as well. Over in San Francisco, this Chase Bowden guy, tons of articles tying him to George Soros. I personally didn't. What I found on him was the Real Justice PAC being the major donor, but we're talking they donated over $700,000 to this guy. So again, we've made mention of these are DA races. Like $1 million, over $1 million is what he brought in, and this Real Justice PAC. I mean, to me, the name of the PAC, after investigating Soros so much, with all of his justice and safety and justice, Illinois safety and justice, Michigan safety and justice, hearing Real Justice PAC immediately triggers memories of George Soros. But even if it's not George Soros, does it really matter? If you go to their website for Real Justice PAC, they'll tell you right on there what they're about. And they're the same formula that of all the DAs that we've been discussing, folks, it's not an accident that all these DAs are there. And Jack, we've been going through this now. This is the third episode that we're bringing mention of these DAs because they're so vital in how this whole thing works. The idea is, we tied in last week with the dude with the flag from Antifa actually having the Antifascista, I forget how to pronounce it. It was a really long German version of Antifa. But even the Antifa today have that flag from pre-Nazi Germany. And their goal was to set the stage for chaos, right? That's what they were supposed to do. They're supposed to set the stage for chaos, could just continually blow shit up and break things and do bad stuff so that eventually the goal here is that the citizenry starts to get so fed up that they turn to the government and are willing to give up anything for some order.
Yeah, they're willing to give up their freedoms, and Bowden, when you talk about these organizations that are funding people like him, he has the exact same agenda that you can find on their website. So to our listeners, we're going to put some reference material so you can see what Bowden's agenda is, and reference material so you can see what these organizations' agenda is, and you can see their linear. And allow me to refer to my notes for a second, but we're talking things like banning cash bail, reducing prison populations, pursuing non-incarceration, and increasing a variety of penalties. This is the agenda that's on the website of these organizations, and the agenda or the platform that these folks are running on. And they're pumping money into them.
It's completely organized. And people need to realize that where in the past you could blow off a DA election thinking, well, it's the law. So, I mean, this is how I always felt anyway. It was like DA was not that big a deal for the elections because they're all lawyers. They're all, this is the law. It is what it is. Like what's a DA going to do? Not even fathoming that there would be a DA who was going to release everybody that's been arrested. Like that wasn't even on my radar. So to like most people, I'm thinking about it like, well, it's a DA. I'm not exactly following the DA elections and what. And again, that's most people are like that, and that's why $1 million to a DA campaign is insane. Because most people aren't even paying attention to that campaign. But the reality is these guys, these globalists, et cetera, we keep using Soros because his name is there, but there are certainly more of them. And there's a club of billionaires out there in that democracy. What was the name of that PAC, Jack? Democracy.
We've reviewed so many. I don't have it out in front of me, and
these guys all got together in a club. I'll put it in the source section. Okay, I got to make a reminder of that. I'll put that in the source section. There's actually a club of billionaires that these guys are in that are designed to support organizations and PACs and things of that nature that support this craziness. But they understand, as well as we understand what convention of states, they understand the power of the states in this country, and they understand the fact that ultimately it's the states that have to fall. One by one, it's the states that have to fall. And in the end, that's what they're doing. And one by one, they're going to try and get these states in such states of chaos in their most populous centers, because that's all they need to do, right? You don't need to get all of New York, let's say. I just happen to know New York's dynamic. You don't need to get all of New York, because upstate will probably never buy into this kind of crap. But New York City, yeah, if you shake up New York City enough, and then you have, you try and come in and make that play, you may pull it off. You may pull it off. At least they're hoping, they're banking that they can. Portland is the same way. So these are the cities that carry these elections for these states. And they're going, hey, if we can just create enough chaos, if we can just scare the people enough, get people afraid enough day in and day out that they'll do anything to just make it stop, that's when we step in.
Yeah, that's when that's when people, yeah, that's when you're willing to trade in your rights. And
right.
And as George just said, tying it together, Portland, the police. Okay. So now you have a police officer that's indicted. Get police off the streets. Crowd control unit quits. Okay. Creating greater chaos. San Francisco, reduced penalties, bringing more criminals in because they know they won't get in trouble. New York City, beating an old man with a cane. Chaos. That is the name of the game. That is the name of the game.
What's disgusting and insulting is that a lot of these mayors and governors will tout low crime numbers. And the reason they have low crime numbers is because they're not arresting anybody. It's disgusting that they would even pull that out, but they do. They talk about it as if we're that stupid, as if we're that dumb. And you see people regurgitating these statistics online. Like they'll regurgitate that stuff like they regurgitate the rest of this messaging on social media as if they think it's like their research that came up with that idea. And I have no idea that there are thousands of ignorant SOBs out there regurgitating verbatim the exact same thing that they are, because Google's putting it all right in front of their face every time they try to find information.
Yeah. Well, the time for ignorance is over. It's time to do some research. We cannot say that enough. Do not take even our word at face value. Look into everything. All right, George, you know what? I'm fired up, and really, I think it's your turn. Why don't you get those juices cooking? I think it's rant time, Georgia. I know you got something to say. Why don't we just kick into that?
Yeah, I do. This Wuhan lab theory thing has been bothering me for a while. It's been bothering me through the entire pandemic. I've been called conspiracy theorist, just like the rest of the people who are paying attention and following what was real as opposed to what we've been told. And now, of course, everyone's acknowledging that it's a completely viable theory. So all of the banning on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else, now it's all come back to show how damaging that type of banning and information censure is. But we got some good information on it. Let's get into it.
We don't have to speculate about being at war. Last May, the Communist Party, through People's Daily, carried a piece which said that there was a quote-unquote people's war against the United States. They've declared war on us. We have to respond. There is a war. China's told us there's one.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
I don't want you to ride. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the streets. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
So the Wuhan lab theory for the origin of the coronavirus has been around for quite some time. The only difference between now and a year ago, or a little over a year ago, is that a little over a year ago, anyone who brought it up, despite the evidence that was presented, was considered to be a loon, a whack, a quack, a conspiracy theorist, some Q follower, whatever the tag may be. Everyone was so desperate to believe that the WHO was not the corrupt organization that it is, and that the CDC and everything else are trustworthy, and Fauci was trustworthy, that they just dismissed everything that came their way. And of course, now we know different. Now we know it's not only a very viable theory, it's almost certain that that's how it happened. The evidence against it being generated in the wet market is almost insurmountable. Dr. Ai Fan was the first doctor that actually saw this in a hospital, looked at it, saw some patients coming in with pneumonia, couldn't figure out what it was, ended up doing some studies on it, stopped, was stunned by what she found, that it was a novel coronavirus, and then started to get the word out to the rest of the medical community. True to CCP fashion, she disappeared. So another doctor, Dr. Li Meng Yan, had been going out. She was sent there from a Hong Kong university by the WHO. This is by her accord. She was sent there. She was in the Hong Kong university, that we know. But she was sent there to investigate it at the behest of the WHO because they were not getting any information from China. She went there, was disturbed by what she found, has been yelling ever since. She defected to the United States, has been screaming from the highest mountain that this was an engineered virus. This started in a lab. She was presenting evidence, putting out papers. She has had them published since. I don't believe that they've been peer-reviewed yet. But the fact of the matter is, what would her motive be? To run from China and take on the CCP propaganda machine? This is one woman who was living a pretty good life at a Hong Kong university. And Hong Kong is not, at least for now, under the same suppression that the rest of mainland China is. That will probably end soon if nothing is done. But the fact of the matter is, she was living a pretty good life. Why would she leave? Why would she go and do this? So she went to each and every media source that would take her. Most of them belittled her, which is pretty disturbing. I have an example of one I want to show you. Just watch this particular. This is an Indian commentator who, why she brought her on, I have no idea. She brings her on the show and then just berates her the entire time. So she asks her questions, asks to tell her story, but this woman clearly did no research on it. She Googled some stuff, read an article or two that scientists were debunking this, right? Because the leaders in the scientific community have been corrupt and on the take for some time, because these are all the government science community, not the entire science community at large. But the CCP has influenced most, if not all of them, as you can clearly see in their messaging on a variety of topics, from hydrochloroquine to the origins, and the list goes on. So she brings this woman on her show. She's talking. She's trying to give her story. And the whole time she's talking, you may as well just have a sign next to her saying, don't believe this woman. This woman's talking garbage. Don't believe this woman. This woman's nonsense. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And of course, it's more ridiculous now, because now in hindsight, right, this was back in the early days. Now in hindsight, we know that, yeah, it's more than likely the doctor was right. So here we go. Let's just look at this embarrassing expose of journalism real quick.
Well, now our newsmaker on the show today, a Chinese virologist, Dr. Li Meng Yan, who investigated the origin of the COVID virus during the initial outbreak in Wuhan, and then startled the world with her claims that COVID virus was laboratory made. She claimed that she was muzzled by her supervisors from speaking out. And Li Meng Yan, who claims to be a former researcher at the Hong Kong School of Public Health, also says the virus was built by merging the genetic material of two bat coronaviruses. In fact, her Twitter account has also been taken down in mid-September after she accused China of intentionally manufacturing and releasing COVID-19. Both her papers have been dismissed by scientists. Reports, however, have also emerged that her mother has been arrested in China and mainland China. Her family still remains there.
So I contact my social network, and because I got my MD and PhD from two top medical universities in China. So I have very extensive this kind of network, basically from hospital to CDC authorities and also to the lab, including the military ones. WHO, China government don't want them to tell the truth, so they collaborate with China government. And also from the end of December, human-to-human transmission already exists, more patients than the government claimed. and also seafood market is just a smoke screen. I see a lot of mainstream media, including Daily Beast, including the National Geographic and New York Times. They write the papers using almost the same words to discredit my paper and change the concept. Basically, they use their title as scientists to twist people's understanding about the word in my paper.
Keep in mind, this interview was longer than what I put up, this edited portion that I put up. There'll be a link below so you can watch the entire interview if you want. There are tons of interviews with Dr. Yan that are out there at this point. You know, here we are well over a year later, and there's a lot of her interviews out there. I've mentioned in the past the Epoch Times and how I've grown to trust the organization as a news source for investigative reporting. I've grown to do that, not because they agree with my opinion, but because I've gone to validate many article after article after article, and everything checks out. And in the end, over the years, and I've really been on them for about the last 2.5 years or so, the mainstream media tends to come out with stories that they break months, a year in the case of coronavirus and the Wuhan lab situation. They're always ahead of the game because they actually do old school investigations. And you'll see when you watch this piece, they're not making any conclusions. I mean, you walk away feeling like, yeah, this was definitely lab created, but they don't specifically tell you it is. But the evidence that they find and propose tells you that it is. And that's where, and they don't suggest that this was made as a bioweapon. They leave wide open. They actually theorize that they think it's more likely that it was an accidental leak. But the point is, it was from the lab. And this information was out there early. If you look up the Epoch Times on Google, because they don't follow the message, because investigative reporting doesn't follow a message, and in the end, that doesn't jive with the powers that be. So Google, when you do it, just like everybody else on Google, Michael Yon, everybody, right-leaning, alt-right publication, right this, right conservative, conspiracy publication, all those tags come before it. So that if you look it up, you're like, I can't believe that. It's nonsense. Look into it yourself. And to do you that favor, I went and looked up every single document that he puts up in these videos. And you can watch the whole video yourself. But I put every single document, a link directly to it on our website under episode 10. So you can literally watch it and click the links as you go and read the studies for yourself. It's not like he's making it up. He's just simply not. And now here we are a year later where everyone's starting to become more open to the concept that it's real. I definitely encourage you after the show to watch this in its entirety so that you can see for yourself the full story that they lay out, because it's legit.
My name is Joshua Phillip. I'm an investigative reporter at the Epoch Times in New York, writing about the Chinese Communist Party's programs of espionage and unconventional warfare for well over a decade. Videos and messages from Chinese citizens leaking through the censorship suggested the situation was much worse than what the regime was reporting. On January 1st, 2020, the Hunan seafood market posted a notice of closure. This was followed by a thorough cleanup of the market, which as an investigative reporter seemed rushed. Guan Yi, a well-known Hong Kong expert, echoed my concern that the move was like destroying a crime scene. On January 26, the Institute of Virology of China CDC announced that 33 of the 585 environmental samples from the Hunan seafood market were found to contain the novel coronavirus nucleic acid, and the virus was successfully isolated from the positive culture samples, suggesting that the virus originated from wild animals sold at the market. At this point, Hunan seafood market being the source of the epidemic became an official conclusion. A few days later, however, a report from the journal Science published online challenged that story. The report cited a paper in The Lancet, one of the world's top medical journals, and questioned whether Wuhan's novel coronavirus pneumonia could not have originated at the market. The first author of the paper is Huang Qiaolin, deputy director of Jinyintan Hospital, the first designated hospital for treatment of unknown pneumonia in Wuhan. Why would this come as a challenge to the official narrative?
I think this journal article is very important. It reveals a lot of important information. For example, this paper talk about the first patient onset was actually on December 1st. These patients were not related to Huanan seafood market. And also no epidemiological association was found between the first patient and subsequent patient. And then also on this paper, it talk about on December 10th, there were 3 more onset cases, 2 of which were not related to Huanan seafood market wholesale. Major discoveries that a total of 41 patients were counted in this paper, and 14 of them proved to be unrelated to the seafood market, accounting for more than 1/3. No one sells bed at the seafood market too, and the official from CDC didn't mention they find any beds in the seafood market too.
The idea of the spread so fast through a population, just the way it was said through the seafood market, is highly unlikely and improbable.
On January 29th, The Lancet republished an analysis of 99 confirmed cases at Jinyintan Hospital, of which 50 had no history of exposure to the seafood market. According to the New England Journal, of the 425 cases confirmed, 45 cases onset before January 1st had no history of exposure to the seafood market.
They clearly know about 14 patients not related to Huanan seafood market at all. That clearly means another source of outbreak. I think somehow this could be a malfeasance or somewhat intentionally cover up some important source of infection.
It appears that the party's main goal here is suppression of information, controlling the narrative. That's more important to them than actually ending the epidemic.
What they're laying out there is that there are too many issues with the early reporting on this, most of which did not get reported at that time. So keep in mind, this is done in April 2020, is when this was posted to YouTube. They're probably working on it throughout March and whatnot. There's a lot of evidence demonstrating that this did not start at the Hunan market, at the Hunan seafood market. And with that evidence being ignored and shunned and hidden and put away so that nobody could see it, the doctors are disappearing, those who are talking about it and trying to get the word out that this is going on. Then the seafood market is wiped clean immediately so that nobody can investigate it or look into it. This is not the way things are normally handled in a responsible situation and a responsible reaction to something like this. Can you imagine a breakout happening, everyone thinking that it started at a particular location, and the U.S. government going in and wiping that location completely clean? I mean, that just doesn't happen. Now, we know that 14 of those 41 cases, so slightly over 1/3 of the cases, had no connection with the market. 2 of 3 of the second round of patients that were discovered, and at this point, it was in December, early December, where they found the 1 case, then they had the next 3 came up. 2 of those 3 were not associated with the market, yet the market is still a part of the criteria for identifying the novel coronavirus. It gets far, far more detailed than that.
On January 10th, China disclosed the full genome sequence of the Wuhan novel coronavirus, and many of the world's top virologists began analyzing it. As early as January 7th, an academic, Zhang Yongzhen, from the National Institute of Communicable Disease Control and Prevention, along with the School of Public Health of Fudan University, submitted a joint paper to Nature. The paper was published on February 3rd and pointed out that the Wuhan coronavirus is closely related to 2 viruses sampled from bats in Zhoushan by the People's Liberation Army, and even exhibits 100% amino acid similarity in the NSP7 and E proteins. What does this high similarity reveal?
Hard to see a protein is 100% identical when the virus jumps species. And so that suggesting maybe the virus could be generated with a reverse engineer process.
What are S proteins? If we compare the receptor ACE2 on the cell surface of human bodies to a lock, this S protein is the key, which can unlock this lock on the cell surface and then invade into the cell to propagate and destroy it. According to a February 26 report on Caixin, Zhang Yangshen's team isolated and completed the genome sequence of the previously unknown virus on January 5th. On the same day, the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center reported the discovery to the National Health Commission and recommended prevention measures. Caixin also reported that the Hubei Health Committee already notified genome sequencing organizations on January 1st regarding the cessation of analysis of Wuhan virus samples. Existing virus samples must be destroyed. Information on the samples, related to papers and related data, are all prohibited from release.
So you see, a third of the patients that came in initially were not, a little bit more than a third, were not associated with the Hunan market in any way. So why this would start to get connected to the Hunan market, especially since, as we now know, and we knew then actually, that the Hunan market doesn't even sell bats, and this virus only exists in nature in bats. Clearly, the Hunan market seemed like almost a silly story for those who were in the know then. So somewhat baffling that this would even begin, that anyone would take this at face value from the get-go. Then we've got the similarities between the amino acids and those proteins. So 100% similarity. Now, if you don't understand what that means, it's 100% similarity to a previous virus. So the one that's infecting humans now, these certain aspects of it have 100% similarity to the previous one, also discovered by that lab, that did not have the capability to infect humans. What that doctor is telling you is that it's incredibly rare to see. When there's a mutation, and I only know this, and I speak like a scientist here, I only know this because of how much I've now read on it, but you don't get a large mutation like that. Like that spike protein getting this mutation is a significant mutation. It changes the entire virus, okay? Even if slightly, it changes the entire aspect, every aspect of the virus. So to have the 100% similarity, it just doesn't happen in nature, okay? Now he's suggesting it might have been reverse engineered. That's more likely than this naturally occurring in a market. And then there's Bat Lady, Xing Zhengli. Xing Zhengli is the person, and the reason they call her Bat Lady is because she's been doing this research on corona bats for quite some time, okay? Years before this pandemic broke out. She was leading the charge in the Wuhan lab as far as the administration and research on this virus. She's the one who was manipulating these S proteins to get them to work and be functional to humans. It's absolutely crazy. What these scientists sometimes are thinking is just baffling to me. Now, my attitude is, since it was in Wuhan and everything is run by the military in China, it's more than likely she was ordered to do this research as opposed to just being curious. But then how do you explain Fauci? Fauci was doing this research here in the States in 2004 up to 2014 when the CDC had a leak, and then Obama saw it and stopped it. All right, he stopped it because he's a human being and he saw this and was like, this ain't about socialism or capitalism or anything. You psychos are going to take down the whole world, and put a pause on it. I'll get into more on that later. But let's get into Bat Lady for a moment.
One Chinese virologist in particular caught my attention. She spent many years researching bats and coronaviruses. She was the first to locate the key to how coronaviruses can overcome cross-species barriers in order to directly infect human bodies. Her name is Shi Zhengli, and she may be an important link to the origin of the virus.
Dr. Zheng Li is one of the top experts in China studying about coronavirus.
Delving further into related information, I discovered that Shi Zhengli published not one, but 4 papers in total, each of which contains important information. Her team's research in the Wuhan lab has been looking into the part that can make coronaviruses transmittable to humans. In November 2015, she and her team at the Wuhan lab once again published a paper, this time in the British journal Nature Medicine. They discussed the creation of a synthetic virus, a self-replicating chimeric virus. This virus had the SARS virus as the framework, with the key S protein replaced by the one they had found in a bat coronavirus she mentioned in her 2013 paper. This new virus demonstrated a powerful ability for cross-species infection. The mice infected with this synthetic virus revealed severe lung damage with no cure. This symbolized that Xi's successful splicing of the SARS virus was a key to open the door to the cross-species transmission. On November 14, 2018, Xi Zhengli spoke at the School of Life Sciences and Biotechnology at Shanghai Jiaotong University. The topic was bat coronavirus and its cross-species infection. On October 16, 2014, the Obama administration, wary of the potential threats to public health from the gain-of-function GOF research into SARS, MERS, or influenza, announced through the National Institute of Health that it was suspending funding into similar research. The funding pause included Xi Zhengli's research project, genetic engineering of SARS-like coronavirus in bats. Indian researchers compared the S protein sequence between 2019 nCoV and SARS. They discovered that 2019 nCoV had 4 new sequences inserted, all of which can be found in HIV sequences through a search on GenBank. Xi Zhengli discredited those observations, although she never denied the existence of the 4 inserted sequences. However, scientists probing GenBank found that there were only 3 viruses containing all sequences. The first is the HIV virus itself. The second is a bat coronavirus discovered by Xi. And the third is this new Wuhan coronavirus.
This is research that they actually published. They were working on developing a coronavirus for the human host.
Definitely check out the Epoch Times full video. There's a lot going on in that documentary that I did not cover because I just don't have time. I want to spend my last couple of minutes just explaining Dr. Fauci and how this whole Wuhan funding went down. So 2014, July 2014, there are some leaks at the CDC, some serious breaches, some serious problems. This gets brought to Obama's desk. Obama comes, takes a look at it, says, "What the hell are you guys doing?" I mean, that's not an exact quote, but I'm guessing that's pretty much how it went down. And then he puts a pause on all this research because it's insane. And so, okay, so now there's a pause on it. 2015 comes. What does Fauci and the NIH do? Well, they go ahead and outsource this whole project to where? Wuhan, China. Doesn't that make a ton of sense? So they outsource the whole thing to the most dangerous government on earth. They send them all their research materials, all of their data, give them access to everything and money to go ahead and continue on the research, which we thought was insane here. But let's go ahead and let the CCP do it. Crazy. And now Fauci acts like, I didn't know they were doing gain of function research. Really? Really? Because that's exactly what you guys extended over there. You were doing it yourself here. And Fauci is documented in his own paper, which I do have the link for under this episode. Way towards the bottom, you'll see Fauci's document in his own paper stating that he believes that the benefits of this research outweigh the risks. So the benefits, which would be finding out ways to deal with the pandemic of this nature, figuring out ways to create quicker vaccines, that benefit outweighs the risk of creating the actual pandemic that those things would be needed for. Absolute insanity. So 2017 rolls along. They go ahead and quietly, without any leaks or anything to bring any attention to the presidency, they quietly go ahead and relaunch their research here. This man is insane. This man is insane. And none of this, all of this is documented. Okay, so there's no, oh, that never happened. Oh, that never. If you're too lazy to go click a link, I've done all the work for you. All of this is documented, and it's all government docs. I'm not giving you articles. None of it is an article. When I tell you that the benefit is worth the risk, that's his writing. That's on his paper that it says that. We need to remain diligent. We need to remain educated on this stuff, and we need to keep up with it because it's moving fast. Go watch that documentary. Check this stuff out. It's real. Oh, it's very real. And it's happening now. Rant over.
And like that, he's gone.
Hey, George, I want to follow your rant with information that I obtained last night. It's information that's coming out on different media outlets, as well as anti-communist Chinese media. So it's coming from both ends. And what we're hearing is this. There is a high-level defector that came over from China 3 months ago under the guise of visiting his daughter. He's from their intelligence agency. He defected and he turned himself in to the DIA. Now, I'm going to post information on who the DIA is, because that's not an organization that a lot of folks are familiar with. There are several, and I think it's important to bring this up, there are several former CIA agents that are saying that this story doesn't fly, that it's just a made-up story. But we find it very interesting that you have Chinese outlets that are reporting this as well. And let me tell you some of the things that are coming to the table. So I'm going to refer to my notes. So evidently, this gentleman has brought over terabytes of data and turned it into the Defense Intelligence Agency. It's about weaponizing viruses. It's about identifying spies within the U.S. government and our universities. And the information is being withheld from the CIA and FBI, according to this report, because there are spies within that organization. Now, if all of this pans out, this could be just, incredible news and make a real dent in the swamp. Now, whether that's going to happen or not remains to be seen. We still have to validate all of this, but we're going to be following this story, and we're providing you links so that you can look at this story as well and follow along with us. George, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we got to get the full scoop on what's going on. Yep. Three former CIA agents saying it's false means nothing to me. As a matter of fact, it almost makes me want to believe it more. So I'm going to sit back and just kind of wait and see, let organizations like Epoch Times and those who have contacts and good handles on China really kind of get in and give us the skinny on what's going on, over there. As far as the possibility of it, I don't think any of it is the thing about someone defecting from China with information like that. The one thing that to me tends to make me lean on the side that they're credible, and this is not necessarily a validated source or something concrete, but it's just, why risk it? Who the hell does that? Who goes out, who leaves China and actively becomes an enemy of the CCP? Who does that? Like, why on earth would you want to be a known enemy to the CCP? There's no benefit to you in that. You can say, oh, well, he could write a book or whatever. How much are you going to make writing a book? And why is that going to matter if you're dead? Why risk that kind of stuff? It's like the virologist that came out that we talked about in the rant. Why would she come out and say the things that she's saying and put out papers and everything else, knowing that the propaganda machine of the CCP is going to debunk her and devaluate her at every turn, and that the scientists, so to speak, the political scientists out there who the media tends to listen to more than anyone, because they don't have to convince every scientist that it's true. All they have to convince are the heads of these agencies, and then the media gets the quote right from them, and then they, on behalf of everybody else, end up covering everybody. Why would you do it? There's no motive in my mind.
Right.
Writing a book is not a tempting enough motive. Like getting out of China, if you're out of China, you could quietly write the book. and people will be interested in it on the bookshelves. Like it's not like and yet you could still be undercover and not, and not in the spotlight or in the crosshairs of the CCP.
You were talking about that, the lady, the Chinese defector. When she came to the United States, I'm not sure if we covered this, but I want to bring it up again if we haven't. When she came to the United States, the FBI took her cell phone. Her cell phone was full of chats dating back to 2019 with chats for the CDC director in Hong Kong. The FBI, the FBI has taken that, and they've yet to release it.
Yeah, we'll never see that. That'll come out 50 years from now in some Freedom of Information Act once it's declassified.
Yeah, half of it will be redacted, right?
Yeah,
be full of black lines.
She'll be dead by then.
Yeah.
Probably the day after she dies, they'll release it. And, I mean, that's the way these guys operate. But yeah. But she's another one. And even in the video that was shown, the journalist is sitting there constantly reminding everyone that scientists don't agree with her. Scientists this, like constantly doing that. And at the same, so not realizing that she is being a part of the problem, right? So like the reason why, like all this message, because she's stunned that China would be able to influence all of the media and science community. And it's like, why would you be stunned about that? And then she goes on, after acting like that can't happen, she goes on, not even realizing it, to keep putting this, keep on the side of the video. While the girl's talking and telling her story, they're putting on the side of the video, scientists debunk this, scientists say this isn't true. And it's like, you don't even let this girl tell her story without debasing it. And then you're sitting here wondering, how could China influence everyone? Well, what they do is they influence the only people you'll pay attention to. And now you feel this innate need to sit here and constantly repeat that, you've got a guest on your show that you're constantly, while she's talking, you're telling people she's full of crap. And it's like you are, without even realizing it, an arm of the propaganda that China is controlling. Like you're sitting there, you're not even letting the viewer listen to this woman without distracting them with stuff that's saying she's full of crap.
Their mission is to debunk her, the walking in the door. That's why they set up, different phrases when they interview people. They'll put things into a particular box and then ask a question where if you answer it, you'd look like you'd be nuts. It's very divisive, and it's sickening. And once you understand that and you start watching that from that perspective, you just see it time and time again.
Yeah, you can't unsee stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So once you start noticing how that game is played, you start to see it. Whereas before, you didn't think much of it. Before, you might have watched an interview like that and been like, well, at least she's being responsible and telling everybody that it's false. Like she doesn't, number one, she was wrong in the end, right? Like now the facts are starting to lead in the direction that this lady was right the entire time. And the fact is, you look at it now in hindsight, and we're at the point now where Facebook's even allowing you to speak about it. Isn't that gracious of them? They're allowing you to speak about it because it is based in fact now. And they can't sit there and they still try to put mostly false or somewhat false statements on people's stuff, but they can't just jack you for telling nonsense because it's starting to gain validity. Now there are Congress people talking about it.
George, I just want to touch on something. It's I'm not sure if it was a microaggression or not, but you said jack you, and I just want to let you know that things like that do hurt. Hey, George, with Father's Day just recently behind us, I wanted to share with you a story. There's a video on salemnow.com. It's a documentary, and it's called The Streets Were My Father. Let me go into a couple of stats. More than 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. That's 32 times the national average. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. That's 9 times the national average. 85% of children with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes, 20 times. And 85% of all young men in prison come from fatherless homes, 20 times the national average. So, you know, we look at a variety of factors in this country. We start pointing fingers. This is wrong. That's wrong. This is wrong. I think our greatest challenge is the fact that we have so many young men growing up without a role model. And as a result of that, there's crime, violence. They're targeted by gangs. They're targeted by, you know, terrorist organizations. They're looking for something that they just can't get. You know, mom's at home and maybe she's working or working 2 jobs, and she might be telling them, hey, you know, stay away from this, stay away from that. But he runs into other, you know, older role models that are in gangs, and they're pointing them in a different direction. And it, you know, it's just it's astounding to me. And do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think when it comes to father figures, I think society has definitely dropped the ball a long time ago, and our acceptance and almost promotion of single motherhood. You know, and it's not to bash single moms. If you're in that situation, you know, it's a struggle, and that struggle is real. You know, however, it's not something to be demeaned, but it's not something to be glorified either. You know, it's a bad situation that someone finds himself in. And, you know, if you know people in that situation, really your response should be to try to help them, not celebrate the fact that they're in that situation. And the reason for that is, like you just said, the children. They need a men play a role here, and society's demonization of men, this new feminization of men. You know, there is a such thing as a man's man, you know, and there is a such thing as, you know, as a straight white male being absolutely crucial. And you know what? That's not true. Not straight white male, just a male figure in general, you know, being a crucial impact in a child's life, whether it's a boy or a girl. Obviously, you know, look, no woman is going to teach a boy how to be a man. I don't care how you try. I mean, they may learn how to be a man, you know, on their own, and they may find additional resources to help them with that. But no woman is going to teach a boy how to be a man. The best she could do is teach a boy how to be the type of man that she likes. But she has no idea what it is to be a man. She has no idea, you know, when we go, you know, even simple stuff like, you know, every time you see your buddies, you're cracking jokes and busting on them and stuff. Like, women don't do that. They can't relate to that. They don't understand that. You know, they go and have very sensitive conversations, and they tell each other everything, and we tell each other nothing. You know, it's just how it is. You know, it's one of those things where, you know, we can sit for hours over some beers and not once have a serious conversation about
there's nothing meaningful or deep about it. Right?
Yeah.
I don't care how you feel. You know, have another beer; it'll make it go away.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, and it's not that we don't internalize any problems, or we don't have any pain, or we don't have, you know, we just deal with it differently, and it is what it is. And you know, as far as how to behave and how to, you know, how to act in society as a grown man, you know, what are values that you should hold? You know, those are things that you don't want being taught to your children by third parties. Right? You want those things taught by the best possible people that could teach them. And even with respect to girls, I mean, daddy's little girl is not a myth. I mean, that's a real thing. You know, when I had my kids, you know, I really wanted a boy because I wanted to carry my name on, and et cetera, you know, but then I had my daughter, and it was like, once I had her, you know, and, you know, she was there, like, I didn't regret it for 1 second. I was absolutely stoked. I love my daughter to pieces, and, like, you know, I wouldn't have had it any other way in hindsight. But before I had children, I didn't know that, you know. So, but even as she's gotten older, there's a special bond between daughter, and just like there's a special bond between son and mother, you know, like there's that special, you know, it's kind of each party gives the other side, you know, a window into what you should expect from the other sex, right? So it's like, and this gets reflected a lot of times in how, women choose their boyfriends and, and whatnot. If they have a strong father figure in the house who's setting the right example and doing the right thing all the time, they tend to hold the people that they date to that standard, and not, obviously there are exceptions to anything, but in general, that's how it works.
I'm sorry, but as you're speaking and you're talking about a man and a man's role in a family, I just started thinking about a story, and I just want to share it real quick. I had just gotten off a plane and I was on my way home. My wife called me and she said that my son, who was 6 at the time, raised his hand to her and yelled at her. And she wanted me to think about how to punish him because she was frustrated. So when I got home, I said, "Hey, John," I said, "come out to the garage with me." And I grabbed the duffel bag and he goes, "What's that, Dad?" And I said, "It's your new home." And we went out to the backyard and I set up a tent and I got a pillow and a blanket and I brought different things for him. I took him around the house. I said, "This is where you go to the bathroom." I said, "We'll bring you food out here." He goes, "You mean I get to just do whatever I want?" And all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is blowing up, right? But as soon as it got dark, he's knocking on the door. I open the door. I said, "No, you can't come in." I said, "I won't have you in my house the way you talk to my wife." And I closed the door on him, right? Turn out the lights, go upstairs. We all went to bed as soon as it got dark. And our bedroom window is up above the backyard. And he's screaming and crying and everything. And my wife starts tearing up. And I said, hold out. That was the difference, right? Yeah. I was willing to let him sit there for an hour.
Yeah, let him suffer a little bit. Tough luck.
She couldn't. So right. I went downstairs and I said, the very same woman you raised your hand to, my wife, she's the one that wants you back in this house. So you should go thank her, because if it was up to me, you wouldn't be back in here. Yeah,
and it's that ability to play good cop, bad cop. You can't play both. Right? Otherwise, you look like a schizophrenic, right? You got multiple personality disorder, whatever. Like you gotta have someone to play that off of to make those things work. You know what I mean? And even if it works the other way, some households, it's the mom who's the disciplinarian.
I think if we leave our audience with any message at all, it's, think about ways that you can help. Whether you have a family member that is a single mom, and how maybe you can mentor their son or daughter. There are a lot of organizations. There's Big Brother. There's a lot of things that can be done if you're in a position to do that. These children, they're dying for stability. They grow up, and because they do not have the typical security provided in a household, that it has a mom and a dad and a strong relationship, they lose that sense of security, and they tend to find other things to provide them with that sense of family. And what's out on the street providing that sense of family typically sends them astray. So, consider what you can do. All right, George, what do you think? We're done with this one?
Yep. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, George.
Hey, wait, Jack, before we go, I just wanted to cover something that people didn't know.
What's that?
They don't know Jack.
Today I'm going to let somebody else do my talking. This is a 1981 film of a Soviet defector talking about the 4 stages that are necessary for a communist takeover of the United States.
The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. Your leftists in the United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot. But they may turn into the most bitter enemies of Marxist-Leninists when they come to power. And that's what happened in Nicaragua. You remember most of these former Marxist-Leninists were either put to prison or one of them split, and now he's working against Sandinistas. It happened in Grenada when Maurice Bishop was already a Marxist. He was executed by a new Marxist who was more Marxist than this Marxist. Same happened in Afghanistan when first there was Taraki, he was killed by Amin, then Amin was killed by Babrak Karmal with the help of KGB. Same happened in Bangladesh when Mujibur Rahman, very pro-Soviet leftist, was assassinated by his own Marxist-Leninist military comrades. It's the same pattern everywhere. The time bomb is ticking with every second. The disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to.
So the next time somebody with progressive values starts talking to you all high and mighty, share this video with them because it's obvious. They don't know jack.
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact!
right, George. Episode 10 down.
In the books, Jack. In the books.
Yes, sir. Final thoughts?
Make sure, folks, look down below, subscribe, follow, check us out on MeWe, Facebook, YouTube. Check out the website as well. You'll find a ton of good information there. We talk about it all the time on the show. Spent a lot of time on the site to make it as easy to use as possible. Definitely give us feedback. And if anybody has a question or anything like that about anything that we've done, just reach out to us directly. You can do that via the website, or you get emailed directly to info@thepatriotthinktank.com, and we will certainly get to it as soon as we can and get you a response as quickly as possible. Other than that, take care. We'll see you next week.
Take care, folks.